the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I'm your host, Aiden Ragland, and for today's episode, why don't you come on down to a place where everyone knows your name, especially if you know the name of today's fantastic guest and the cool concepts he has to boot. Today's guest is Michael Greayworks, a comedian, writer, interviewer, and creator of several sensational indie animated concepts such as the Howling Hoods and Myths in Manhattan. Michael has been a fantastic person that I have noticed showing some love and support for this podcast, as well as some love and support that they have for the indie animated space as a whole. So I thought I would reciprocate that love right back and highlight some of the fantastic indie animation that he's trying to put out there today. If you enjoy Michael, please make sure you support him with the links down in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Leave 5 stars wherever you can. You know, I see that stuff, you know, it genuinely warms my heart. Speaking of subscribe, I highly recommend you do subscribe to the YouTube channel because we are currently on the hunt to get 2,500 subs by the end of 2024. If we hit that goal, I will get my first ever tattooed as designed and decided by you, the community. So if you have something wacky that you want to see tattooed on my arm or my leg, well, subscribe to the podcast today. If you want to go a little further with that support, I recommend you check out the merch shop at fourthwall.com with a link to that in the description below. We have some fantastic merches done by some outstanding artists, including the brand new official logo merch as done by Roshan Galaxy. You would look amazing in it today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast. Alright, Michael, before we really get going, I must ask the icebreaker question of the podcast, if I may. Let's say you get to go to a desert island on your own accord. It's just you, alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, breathe. You can truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. With accommodations, you're not stranded on a desert island. It's like a little personal B&B paradise away from society for a little bit. To make sure you don't go completely insane on this island, you can bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you to help with whatever kind of headspace you want on this island. If given this opportunity, what would that one piece be?
I think I would have to go Venture Bros.
Venture Bros. Okay, that's a good choice.
The movie. Yeah. It's probably my favorite show. It's up there. It's like at least in my top 5. But like, Venture Bros is just that show of you're kind of like, because Doc and Jackson were the two like creators of it, but they've created like every episode. They wrote every and storyboarded for every episode except for like one in like season, like the last season. They wrote every episode except for like the Scooby-Doo parody episode that was like kind of like written by another person. And it's just you can like you see kind of like the writing and like friendship evolve along the way, and like every reference is like 6 references, and like you would just dissect each joke. It's like that show is like it's like having 10 other shows with you.
Right. Especially with like just the creativity and like the time that you can clearly see in just about like every single aspect of that show. Back to obviously like the early days of it when you could tell there's a little bit of a roughness, but there was obviously a lot of humor into it, to like the more modern adaptations of it, or the more recent ones that to where like it was just crafted from start to finish or whatnot. Like, it's a good pick. Is there a particular reason why that show like sticks to you and like that's the one that you want to like bring with you?
I think it's like that's kind of like it's my favorite kind of an adaptation or like parody of, because obviously it's like it is a a kind of a riff on Johnny Quest just visually, but there's also like so much other stuff that goes into it of like just the backgrounds of like musicians, B movies, comics, like old cartoons, even like toys, or even just art is such a big influence in the background. It's such a like it's kind of like the show that's like kind of perfect for like someone who just wants to like if it's great on its own, but it's also great if you kind of like know the inside joke and all the stuff. It's like after a certain point you feel like you're also in on the joke.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, hell, the writing alone for that like lets you in on so many different like inside jokes, like within so many different layers of stuff. And even then, with the amount of writing and like the one liners that are still quoted to this day,
Yeah, yeah.
I still just randomly quote just like here or there. Come on, he was in Depeche Mode. Like it's a simple line, but I still quote it to this day. But regardless, the Venture Bros, that is your answer. You're locking that in.
Yeah, I'm locking that in.
Then if that's the case, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome everyone, I am your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You would look fantastic in the merch that we have at the merch shop, fourthwall.com. Link to that is in the description below. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Postmod Art Pod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is a comedian, writer, interviewer, and creator of several sensational indie animated concepts, such as The Howling Hoods and Myths in Manhattan. Welcome to the podcast, Michael Greayworks!
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be here. How are you doing on this fantastic day?
I'm doing well. I got some shopping done. I just had like a bowl of like I heated up just that like grocery store like nacho cheese. It's like a liquid, and it's just I just poured on some chips. Just like I'm not cooking today.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes you need that good like just lazy day just to enjoy yourself. And
yeah, totally.
And what says enjoying yourself like nachos and a good interview, right?
Yeah.
I will say thank you for taking the time to be here. You've certainly been a person that I've noticed online, both with the concepts that you've been able to produce, but also the support you've shown, not just to this podcast, but also to the indie scene as a whole. And I definitely want to showcase that love right back to you and really, give yourself that platform as well. But before we talk about the stuff you're doing nowadays, I want to go back just a little bit. I want to learn more or less the origin story of Michael. What got you interested in art and animation in the first place?
Well, I've always like really been a fan of like a lot of like just animation and art in general, especially like comics, but like different kinds of comics. I kind of got into comics like a bit of a weird way because originally, most kids kind of get into like they got into they had like like superhero comics and stuff like that. Because the way my family kind of grew up. I didn't really I didn't really get that kind of stuff or like go to like the bookstore originally or even like have a TV. TV with like cable on it. Like what was on like TV was like what was on PBS or like when you went to your friend's house. So usually stuff was like DVDs my mom would get from like garage sales or VHSs and stuff.
Okay.
And a lot of the books and like comics I read were a bit more older for the time. Of like it was one of the big it was Bone by Jeff Smith.
Yes.
That was one of the big ones. Don Rosa's run of Scrooge McDuck, where he's the king of the Klondike, and the original Dragon Ball manga, which was kind of interesting at the time because it's like I was one of the few kids who like actually started with Dragon Ball like in the early 2000s, but like I started with the manga. I started with like Dragon Ball, and it was very confusing at first of like why is it, and like because especially you just got a volume and it's like I think the original one I had was like it ends right at like during the start of like the Red Ribbon Army. It's like where's the rest of it?
I mean, that's certainly an interesting place to start. I was gonna say I know for hearing that stuff, it just kind of took me back to a time. I remember some of the first comics I had where there's just like obscure like one-off ones that I would get from, I think it was like my mom or whatnot. Like I got a version of Spider-Man, but it was like a weirdly like illustrated one. Like it wasn't like a traditionally illustrated one or whatnot. It was a little bit more of like a grim illustrated edition of it. And then I remember one time me and my mom and my older brother, we went to a flea market and we found like the comic book areas, and for some reason I wanted to see like some of the Flash, but instead of like trying to get like a chronological order or something like that, I'm pretty sure I picked like 3 or 5, but it was like this was like this was issue like 181, issue 184, 186. Like because I was a kid, I didn't know better than like I need to read this in order or whatnot. It's just the cover of this one looks good, let me take this one. Ooh, the cover of this one looks good, let me take this one.
it's definitely tough to get into. Like even now, it is really tough. Like even if you have all like this Wikipedia things of like just getting into like really big like superhero IP, mainly DC and Marvel.
Right.
That is a struggle. But yeah, after that, it's like that was like very. It was one of those things I was like really like there for, and as time went by, like I would like the school like library would usually have like a lot of stuff that I would check out. And it's like, well, I was also because the school I went to, we would have like like every like once a week we'd have like free periods like back then because I kind of got like we had like these school computers and I had like a fake not fake I had like an actual flash drive. It was like a really kid flash drive.
Okay.
And I was obsessed with two things at the time because that was when like I started to like find the internet. I was obsessed with like making my own like book and writing parody songs that I saw on the internet at the time. And that flash drive hopefully is gone because it has all like has all the bad like movies, well like fan films me and my friends made at the time. Or
Okay.
I remember one was like we did like a weird mystery science theater, but to a fan version of Star Wars, where it's like while like the characters were fighting with the lightsabers, we would add like awful commentary of like, oh my god, they have lightsabers. Oh my god, they're dueling.
You say that like hopefully that thing is gone. I want to see that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, that's my personal like arc of the Covenant because I even remember what the flash drive looks like specifically because it was like a cylinder flash drive and it had like sunglasses on it, a big nose, and like crazy curly hair. And
wow.
it's just like, man, I know my awful like middle school books are on there and stuff like that.
That does lead to an interesting question because obviously one of the titles that I listed in the intro is that you were a writer. What was it about writing, especially early on, that you kind of just like clung to? Like, what was it about writing that kind of like creatively fulfilled you early on?
I think it was just like I was always like I was a very avid reader as a kid. It's like my uncle and like I was I had like very weird phases as a child where like the books I'd want they're like kids don't want these books or it's like this is a weird thing to want. And like I remember because that was the thing I really like third grade specifically. I was really into Moby Dick,
Okay.
like to a weird degree, and like that's what I was like telling my mom like I want this book, and she's like like maybe I can get you like a picture book of that. It's like no, I want Moby Dick, I want the book, and I got that, and it's like that kind of like more like in like older pulp stuff as well, like stuff that was like kind of like entertainment at the time of that was like kind of like what our modern version of like blockbusters would be
Mm-hmm.
because we had like a lot of like stuff we would like find like very like garage sales stuff type uh like Robin Hood but also like the Zorro series
Okay.
and yeah a lot of stuff of like The Shadow or like Dick Tracy and like like more classic pulp stuff and that kind of like increases like time went on and yeah like and I started to like branch out more to like read more modern stuff and read like stuff like from like other countries but it's like yeah I still have like a significant soft spot for those kind of stuff and originally I was like the short stories I did write in high school were more like kind of like parodies of like classic noir stuff like in one it was like they're in fast food town. It's like a noir murder mystery but all the characters are like fast food mascots.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
Instead I was very proud of this but instead of smoking cigarettes he always had like a fry in his mouth.
Yes. Yes, that's brilliant. Oh god, I just I can easily just visualize that or whatnot. Or just like do you think of like some of the silly one-liners or whatnot that you
Oh
can think
yeah.
of stuff like for example like Ronald McDonald like just or whoever the version of that would be or whatnot have the fry in his mouth. It's like looks like more than the ice machine's broken
Yeah.
today. Ice cream machine's broken today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the things, the movie, my mom, she was like, she would usually like watch movies with us, but she had like a very specific era of movies. She liked. We still have like the old DVDs. She was obsessed with like movies from like the Mel Brooks era as well,
Okay.
specifically stuff like Gene Wilder, like very like the real world is the real world, and like it's a like Gene Wilder, like what he was like known for is like for being like very like visibly funny, but also like almost like having like a borderline blank face of just the most subtle expressions
Hmm.
before he just unleashes. Uh, and stuff like that, and like Cannonball Run or Blues
Yeah.
Brothers, those were really popular by
Yes.
us.
Oh my god. I remember growing up just watching the Cannonball Run DVD just like over and over again. That one.
Oh yeah,
I what was it my girlfriend recently showed me Blazing Saddles because I've always heard of Blazing Saddles, but I never sat down and actually
yeah,
watched it or whatnot. I mean, like especially what you're talking about, just like Gene's delivery and that kind of thing
yeah.
is comedic gold at the end of the day.
When my mom's dad saw that movie, actually, Blazing Saddles in theaters, him and his group of friends, they got kicked out of the theaters because they were apparently laughing too loud. They're like, "You are disturbing other people. You have to leave."
I imagine your pop at that point. It's like, are you watching the same thing I am? You can't tell me this stuff isn't
It's a
gold.
comedy, man. Come on.
You're supposed to laugh.
Yeah.
And I guess it'll a way to kind of transition. Speaking of laughter and stuff like that, I assume like those comedy films like that. Is that what kind of intrigued you into kind of the comedy career? Something as you wanted to potentially take up?
Yeah, definitely a bit. It was also just kind of a level to just like, you might as well because it's like a. But it's always that thing someone thinks they can do until they go up and do it, and like their joke bombs for the first time.
Yep. Yep.
Which is it's a great humbling experience as well because it's like, yeah, you tell a bad joke online, like no one really cares, but if you tell a bad joke in person, especially like a scripted one, it's like you want to die.
Yep.
It's just
Like, like even no matter if it's like a room full of people or even like in a Discord group with like five friends or whatnot, you say a joke and there is silence afterwards, and you're just like, all right, well, I guess I'll go fuck myself then.
oh yeah, God, totally. No, it's like it's no, but yeah, there was and it's also another thing of like sometimes you see other people bomb or some people like lash out. It's like, okay, let's just it's a good I think it's also a good like writing experience of like when you write a joke and like not like doing stuff like I don't know, playing to like the crowd to a degree or like doing like just this the shocker joke. Not that those like I don't love that stuff. It's like when you write one out, it's like you have to like it's a great like planning experience, and like I think it's also a great kind of writing tool as well when you're like working with like dialogue of like you write it out and it's like, okay, this looks pretty well written. So like you say it out loud and like you see how that sounds. It's like, okay, that's not good. But also if you say it out loud to like a group of like comedians and they're like,
That
that's definitely like, okay, I'm gonna cut that.
there's there's a podcast. Okay, so this reminds me of two separate instances. One, there's a podcast I listen to sometimes called Good One, a podcast about jokes. It stars like one of the head writers at Vulture magazine, interviewing like different comedians. And I hear that situation all the time. But also, not too long ago, I had a comedian on the podcast named Dane Cathal, I believe is how you pronounce his last name or whatnot. And what you were talking about right there, just like talking about to other comedians and like the, them being serious about a funny joke more than anything else is always a very interesting visual for me, but I also kind of get it. Like for some of these people, like this is how they're gonna potentially eat at the end of the day.
Oh
If the joke works or if it's kind of one of those like, I think you need to tweak. I think the delivery needs to be a little bit more like this, or like you really
yeah.
want to word it like that. You might want to find a different way to like reword it. It's always an interesting visual in my head
Yeah.
with that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
it was definitely a like experience to have, and it again like wow, like I'd say like 98% of comedians like don't like like make it the way they want to, and 1% are able to make like kind of a living from it,
yep.
but then the other 1% are the ones you are thinking of like the famous comedians, because it's like I have been paid to do comedy spots, but it's also just like I've had those days of like, oh man, I have to drive out there because it's like a 10-minute mile drive,
Right.
and I will get $40 and that's gonna kill my gas,
Yep.
so it's like, is it even worth it? I did have one very bizarre experience of like I did get a email someone asking me to perform for their wife in comedy for a birthday party, and they're like, you're gonna be like in the basement with the other people. I'm like, I don't know, I'm not doing this.
There's comedy seller, but this isn't
Yeah.
the kind of seller I'm thinking of. All right.
Yeah, it's also just telling comedy, like in that like if it's like, hey, you're a stand-up comedian, do a joke. It's like I'm at like a club right now. I don't like I'm not in the vibe.
There you go. It's definitely an interesting vibe. When did it for you go from this kind of like general love and appreciation for the arts in all different forms to a passion and truly wanting to make it your career? Like when did it go from just like writing these stories and doing fan dubs or fan Mystery Science Theater recreations to like truly wanting to go out and like carve out a career for you could be like a writer or a comedian out in the field?
I think it was like kind of during like the midst of COVID as
Mm-hmm.
well. But like when it was initially started, because I was like, I was working during the pandemic. I was working all the time. I was so exhausted because it was like a 9 hour shift, and I had a mask on my face, and
Yeah.
like the whole, like it caused like blisters. It's like then I had like a other like side stuff I would do along the way. I just got like super burnt out, and like all the stuff I watched was like it didn't really give me the exact same like thrill or exhilaration I had like back in the day. It's like, well, I kind of want to see this. It's like, what is this? Like why not this? But it's like then I started to like talk to some people. It's like, why not? Like I actually because I've written I've done like several scripts for like web novels in the past that I
Okay.
thought of like publishing, but like, do you remember? I'm not sure if you heard of this Worm, Parahumans. It's also known as.
I don't think I have. No.
Yeah, it's a superhero web novel series that ended, and now it got continued with Ward. But the thing was, like, when he made that, he made it like kind of like the way Shonen was, of like he would release a chapter every once a week.
Okay.
But like he got burnt out like really bad, and which is understandable. That's crazy
Oh
to
yeah,
do.
absolutely. Especially for I can only imagine how long some of those like chapters or some of
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
instances were.
And yeah, it's like I was planning on like doing a web series. It's like, well, I kind of want a comic because I love comics, and I what Myths in Manhattan was actually and Howling Hoods were being made at the same time as comics.
Okay.
Howling Hoods was going to be a web comic, and Myths in Manhattan was going to be a graphic novel. However, Myths in Manhattan was like I was putting like a lot of gusto into that. However, this just happens. It's like we're still friendly, but the illustrator for Mr. Manhattan like work just came up because she's also a museum curator, and
Okay.
like she got married as well, and she has like she's basically with her family life with her husbands and like her parents, and like that's just the nature of this kind of stuff, and it bummed me out because it's
Hmm.
also like I have the script written, and it's like we got like two-ish pages done, and like it really bummed me out because I was really looking forward to this. So I decided to be like, well, I have some. I was like noticing at the time there was stuff like uh what was it like 20, like stuff like I think Helva Boss like had its pilots, and there's stuff like Monkey Wrench with its pilot, and like
Hmm.
other animation stuff with its pilot, and it's like, why don't I like give this a go? And funny enough, the storyboard for Howling Hoods is like I just edited the comic panels like a lot, and I did kind of work on the comic a bit with a friend of like the panelization. Like I did some like the sketches of and but then that I used that with like the graph for the graph for like the animated short, and I'll admit it, like it's someone you can tell who was like his forum of writing was like books and like web stuff and like comics to animation. Like it's an entirely different beast,
Right. Right.
and I have way more knowledge of it now, and it's like way more professional stuff because it's like yeah, I have drawn and done sketches and stuff like that before in the past, but it's also just like doing animation. That's an entirely different thing. You just gotta think of backgrounds, and you gotta think of environments, and you gotta think of all the model sheets for all the characters and stuff like that, and like movement. And so that was like it was a great learning experience for me. But if I were to like go back in time with like the knowledge I have now, I would do it very differently, like go about it and do it
Right.
like in a much more professional way. But it's like one of those things where like you learn from your failures, and it's like I think it's also a little bit of a level of humility I have of like I know thyself, so it's like how critical am I going to be of other people's series? Because it's like because it's kind of like the thing said about movies of like yeah, every movie comes from like a very special place, and it's like there's always something a bit special about every movie. uh but yeah, it was a great learning experience. And then like after that, and I was like, I'm working a bit more professional. I'm talking to some people and like actual voice actors and like more people who are like, hey, I might be interested in like doing this with Howling Hoods. I was like, and like, hey, if you have other animation projects, we might hire you for this job. And it's like, well, I might revisit Miss Manhattan because I have the script written out. So the first chapters, so to speak. Funny enough, though, Miss Manhattan, that was going to be a kid's book. That was going to be a more mature book. That was going to be a graphic novel.
Oh
That became
wow.
a storyboard. Yeah, yeah. It has changed a lot, and it's like, why don't I adapt the first few chapters from Miss Manhattan into the a storyboard kind of like pilot thing, and some stuff had to get cut just for like the sake of time. And I think you can see that. And it's like it's definitely more of a graphic novel format. But yeah, afterwards it's like I'm really glad of like what the stuff we were able to produce because even if it's like if it doesn't go from there, it's like well you can still see the thing I worked hard on. It's like out there and people can
Oh
like see
yeah.
ideas. Yeah.
I mean, I think that the thing that's like really cool and interesting is like it's not like this is just something that you just like crapped out of nowhere. When like you had these like ideas in mind for a while, it's just due to circumstances, both ones that you couldn't control, but you were also seeing like the effects of or whatnot. Like
Oh yeah.
you pivot it into these two like incredible like animated concepts. I'm curious, like aside from seeing the success of the indie animated pilots, like why did you decide to go animation with it? Because like you said that the illustrator had all the stuff with life and stuff like that. If you really wanted to, if you still wanted to go with that path, you could have found another illustrator possibly and hired them on. So like, was there like
Yeah.
another reason why you thought animation was the probably the better way to go to tell these stories?
I think I was well, for one. I was really kind of depressed with that habit because we are like also like friends and stuff like that. It's like we still talk and it's
Right.
just like and like her style was just like
It was what you
if you
wanted in particular.
yeah. I mean, we're calling on Twitter, on Instagram. If you do find her, she still occasionally posts.
Okay.
It's like, what, you busy with your loving husband, you nerd? Will you come here and make my comic?
True, but I mean, like you could have at least like I I can imagine like if you really wanted to, you could have like presented like what little bit you had out there and be like, is there any artist that could illustrate this style?
Yeah, yeah.
But I was saying
I
like,
think it's also a very big influence on Miss Manhattan was early 2000s cartoons, like stuff like uh, Static Shock or American Dragon, Danny Phantom. Those are the two big ones of like
yes,
superhero stories, but also not really because they're paranormal and they're not are they're kind of superheroes, but they're also in the shadows. They're very like Ninja Turtle esque, and again like Ninja Turtles, the early 2003 series, or stuff like Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy. It's like I love that vibe of superhero, like stuff like that, or Static Shock, or like of like yeah they're doing fantastical stuff but they're like treating it like a blue collar job or like just helping their community.
yeah.
It's like someone being like, oh, I need help with my roof. It's like okay. It's not as like I have to gear up like Batman. It's more like a plumber just being like it's not even my job but I'll do it.
It's the more grounded level of it more than anything else than like the super fantastical like
Oh,
Superman stopping a comet from like hitting Earth.
oh yeah.
It's literally like you said. It's like the Max Plumber like going into the
Mhm.
sewers to see
Yeah.
what's causing all the water to stop or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and stuff like also. I think it was also I decided to go a bit further more to because in graphic novels you could be a bit more violent than you would a show because shows have more, especially for like a kid show like stuff like Bone that got away with a lot of stuff
Right.
despite it's still technically being for children. Uh, but then it's like I saw stuff like Invincible come out. It's like that has the vibe of like an early 2000s DCAU show, but it's like, oh, it's like I describe it as like same with Mr. Manhattan of like one of those early 2000s kid shows, but the safety net is off, or
Mm.
that were like after hours basically of like it's not to the point of like oh it's absurd like sex jokes or like violent like over the top gore or like characters just talking like just like being incredibly rude or whatever or being like very crass. It's like that can't happen but it's more of just like yeah we're kind of keeping it casual but keeping it straightforward of like oh no Cleo can die in this scenario like she's a teenager and she can be in danger and like we see more stuff like violence but also that also gives the benefits that I don't think a lot of people kind of take advantage of when it comes to more adult animation. Of like, we can have longer scenes, stuff can just like pause longer. We can have like quiet stuff. It's not catered towards like children, where it's like we have to have a joke every 5 minutes, or like again, kind of like to go back of like the older Gene Wilder stuff. Like my favorite comedies as a kid were like stuff uh like Willy Wonka, where so like it's very dry and there's like a bunch of
Yeah.
background gags and stuff like that. Like that's always or like there's build up for it. I think that's another thing as well. Uh, One joke did have to get cut, and Miss Manhattan did bum me out, but uh, I was working on it with my buddy Kevin, who's like kind of my main storyboard guy, and like we work together all the time, and like he nailed the joke that I originally like. I even had to like sketch it out for him
Hmm.
to like make sure it's like the angle. It's when Cleo meets her friend Alec, and it's revealed that he's like missing his left arm. She's like, "Oh, you're all right," and then you just see the like missing arm. It's like, yes, we were able to adapt that.
That's great.
Yeah,
I mean, you seem all right.
yeah.
So I know we kind of illustrated like how we got to this point to where these things are to where they are, but I think now is probably a better time to actually tell people what exactly these concepts are more than anything else. So
Oh, yeah.
let's start with Myths of Manhattan, because I could imagine that's probably the one you've was that the one you started first, or was Howling Hoods the one you started?
Technically, yeah. That was
Technically,
when
yeah.
I started first, and
So
then Howling just came out first.
fair enough. So let's talk about Myths of Manhattan first. For those who
Mhm.
have no idea what in the world exactly we were even talking about in the first place, how would you describe Myths of Manhattan?
I was Miss Manhattan is about a girl with a magical ability to turn into a sphinx, and she serves as the guardian for New York, both protecting the mundane and the magical sides of it, and trying to keep these worlds separate. However, it's going to be pretty evident that these worlds are going to collide in one way or another, and she's going to unfind secrets and all that stuff. And I think also vibe wise of like kind of like what I mentioned earlier of like Danny Phantom and like Static Shock or American Dragon, but with like a big influence of like Eastern European culture, and like the safety net is off. So it's like it's not to the point of like this isn't even like a diss on those shows, because like there are shows for kids of like there's not going to be like a scene of like a character like doing like a what are those like dancers like they're really big in Asia of like the cake
Uh,
pop dancers to like get around all the like the enemies and stuff. It's like if they do that, they're probably gonna get shot in the leg. It's just
it's one of those like, yeah, they have these super fantastical powers and whatnot, but there's actually consequences and more than 2 ounces of
yeah,
sense when it comes to the villains.
yeah, or even just like kind of like when I was watching Dragon Ball of like even when I was younger of like things can get really violent really quick.
Yes. Yes. And like hearing especially like the influence that you were talking about, like that Danny Phantom, American Dragon, Jake Long, Static Shock. Those were shows that I all absolutely
Oh
loved.
yeah,
That was the stuff that I more or less like grew up on and could not get enough of. I mean, I still reminisce about Danny Phantom to this day. It's still like a top five show that I love, period. Like
Mm.
animated or otherwise. So like hearing that you're gonna be like taking this concept and illustrating it with these like really cool characters like Cleo, please tell me if I'm pronouncing this last name right, but Cleo Meshirakova.
It's close enough. Yeah, and hers has like an A at the end, because that's an interesting thing with these kind of surnames of like Russian origin of like when it's a woman who has that, it's Meshikova, but if her father is just Meshikov. I
Meshikova.
don't know
Okay.
why. I think I'm pretty sure there is like a historical reason as to that, but it's like
Why did you want to emphasize like what was it about her? How did you more or less like develop these characters and these concepts? Like what was it about like having this teenage girl that's able to turn to a sphinx? Why was that something you wanted to emphasize and hone in on?
well, I was thinking of like shows of like Danny Phantom and American Dragon and stuff like that. I was thinking like, I haven't really seen this show of like with like a main like female girl, like female characters like as the main lead who can like transform into something like this. Because when I think of like, I was never really into magical girl stuff. The closest would be like Danny Phantom or American Dragon, but it's like that'd be kind of interesting. Of like if she turns into like a big monster as opposed to like a fairy lady or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Like it's
Uh,
as opposed to like for example like a Sailor Moon or a Juniper Lee or
yeah,
shows like that.
Oh, I did. Yeah, Jubilee. I did watch that too. And I think that was because originally I think also a kind of a minor influence when I was like writing it as a book, and this has been kind of abandoned since this point. Was Percy Jackson?
Okay.
That's actually why it takes place like in a museum. The first few
Oh.
chapters, which is kind of a fun reference, and the reason why I used the Sphinx was just because I was like looking up like all the like werewolf that's used, dragon that's used, angel, demon, blah blah blah, like all the stuff that's used. Is like I don't think I've ever really seen a Sphinx being used in like a setting like this. So
Okay, so
yeah,
it's just that kind of unique aspect of this has never been used. I imagine you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is that why you more or less went with like that I guess like Egyptian, Eastern European, or like that kind of influence when it comes to like the characters and the mythology of it?
kind of. Well, originally in the book, Cleo was going to be half Greek.
Okay.
Um, Half Greek and half Russian. However, I decided like this book's kind of about like different cultures and all that stuff, and like she's in New York. Wow, like I haven't also like when I was writing at the time, it's like I didn't see like a ton of it with like girls with like darker skin, so I decided to make Cleo like her mom make her of like Black Georgia in New York and stuff like that. I think it would also like kind of like uh make her dad like seem even more like a foreigner to a degree. And
Okay.
it's like when it comes to her dad, it's like I do another part of this book is that like there's a lot of influence of like different cultures from like Eastern European countries and like folklore and stuff like that because they don't really get used. And when there is like some like Slavic culture in a lot of like cartoons, it's usually like kind of evil weirdos or creeps. And I wanted to portray her as like portray as a bit more positive, but also like get into some of the more nuances of it. There's some like even just some visual references, but also like Norm shop that's full of like items from different like parts of like Slavic folklore. It's a bit more mixed, like it's not like directly one place.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, Cleo's also her dad is like Ukrainian Russian, and he's from Crimea, and that's a whole thing at the time of like where he would have been, and uh, but I thought he was even like kind of designed to be almost like the stereotypical like Eastern European mook or muscle of like he does baby
Mm.
milk and stuff like that, and like he has an eye patch. But here's like no, he's a very sweet guy, but we are going to get into like some of the fun like culture exchanges or stuff I had to deal with. Like I do have a lot of Polish like family and like Polish blood.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's like, man, it's an experience when you're like, it's 10 at night and your dad just starts pickling beets. You're just like, no.
that's that's hilarious to hear. It's one of those like you perked my interest a little bit when you said the Polish thing because my grandparents are actually from Poland. Like I believe they came over either right like they basically came over around the time the Holocaust was a thing. Obviously they were trying to get
Yeah.
away from that. And so unfortunately that like one of them passed away whenever I was little, and the other one passed away in 2011. I want to say 2012, somewhere in that range. And the, I did get a little bit. I mean, I still get a lot of love for the culture as well. Anytime I get a chance to like expose myself to some sort of Polish culture, like I am all for it and such. Like I know pierogies is like the stereotype, but like
Yeah, that's my thing.
I've also enjoyed other delicacies like wamki. Like that's absolutely
Yeah,
fucking.
yeah.
I cannot get enough of that. Anytime I can
Kebabs are also pretty big in the
Kebabs,
Polish
yes.
community.
Anytime
Yeah.
I can expose myself to like a Polish market and get some of the different treats from there and whatnot. Unfortunately, I only know 3 words in Polish, and I want to get better about it. But it's I'll see if you know these: Nastrovia, Dupa, and Dupayash.
Yeah, Polish is really, it's a, I think it's also a thing of like, it's like, oh, I kind of get this at first, but then like, some of my family members are like really good. Like actually, my cousins they go entirely to a school in Chicago that's like I think they might have graduated at this point, but it's like it's just a Polish speaking school
Oh
and
wow.
stuff like that. It's like it's so they speak so fast. That it's like that's definitely a tough thing. It's like Poloshka, pierogi. It's like oh, it's like okay, slow down.
I will say for the people at home that are wondering what in the world I said cheers, and a hole to put it nicely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's cool to hear that like you're really taking the time to really get that kind of influence from those cultures in here into a what sounds like a fun concept. Like I can only imagine, especially with what little you've been able to tease of it so far. Like
Oh yeah.
just seeing the characters that you could be able to have, which they look absolutely fun. Like I love the designs of the character. Like your team really did a good job, like really
Oh yeah.
going forth
Yeah.
and really making these characters look amazing, especially Cleo in like her Sphinx
Mm.
form. I love that form so
Oh
much.
yeah. Yeah. That was something like I was like I actually did a funny kind of story with the comic illustrator I was working with. I did some sketches. I drew like Cleo like digitally and like stuff like that. And like they like I asked other people for their opinion. I was like, hey, can you do this? And they're like, oh, like this. It's like that. Like I used that as a basis. I was like, I drew like my own version of that, and it looks very different now. And I shared it with Amira as like kind of the basis, and like because we were having a meeting, and she's like, I don't think she knew that I worked on it. So she's like, yeah, the face is off, the eyes don't match. They're like too proper. I don't like the hair. I'm like, oh yeah. And then she's like, wait, did you do this?
It's like going heaven to the criticisms. Like, oh wait, you
Yeah.
did you
No.
do this? Like,
Yeah, she was
did
very cool.
I mean,
But yeah.
I mean, this is a good attempt. I can see
Yeah.
the it's just the immediate
Yeah.
tone change.
And yeah, something was something we really, really worked on. Of originally, she was going to have like a lot more feathers like in her legs and stuff like that,
Okay,
which all the colors, like the colors in her hair, they're colors that do have symbolism in like Egyptian mythology. Because Cleo's Egyptian side is like very, 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 very distant, but it's more of like an understated thing. The only thing that like a sphinx in this wouldn't have are the wings. That's technically from her dad's side.
hmm
Uh, but also one of our design choices of like I do want to give her like a bunch of different hairstyles. I do have like a plan, but it's like her base hair is meant to resemble like almost like a lion to a degree.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool, and I know there hasn't been a whole lot out there for people to really indulge in this stuff. But I can only imagine like what you're planning when it comes to Myth in Manhattan, and what people can honestly expect. Because
Oh yeah.
I can imagine it's gonna be a fun experience through and through whenever you
Yeah,
do
yeah,
get the chance
totally.
to show this.
Yeah, it's an interesting process of like you get to see it kind of like also evolve to a degree because like you could see like kind of the side of was like meant like originally for like a younger audience. And it's like okay, but like I kind of like decided to like kind of evolve with it. And it's like why don't I put like almost like an invincible kind of thing. It's like something maybe a teenager can watch, but probably like maybe have like someone be like this is probably a bit too intense for you or like this moment or stuff like that.
That's fair. That's valid. And like I said, I cannot wait to certainly see that.
Oh yeah.
But for those that might be hungry for something a little bit more, closer in the Greayworks, library at this point, let's talk about the other series that you've been having a hand to craft in, and people have actually may have gotten a chance to see some already, and that is the Howling Hoods. Now,
Yeah.
I'm curious. Once again, let's start by asking this for people that may have no idea what in the world we're talking about. How would you describe the Howling Hoods?
Childhood is kind of like a world where like myths and folklore are interconnected and they're all like together and like they mix and match, but it's in a pragmatic, profit-driven society. And so it's like we get to see them like doing like day jobs and stuff like that, but also it follows two huntsmen, John Viter and Rose Hunt, as the Howling Hoods, who are a pair of huntsmen, which is just basically someone who will do random jobs for money, mainly bounty hunting, but it's like
Okay.
they'll also do other stuff.
Other stuff. I get now joking.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Oh, there are some huntsmen here that are just like straight up assassins.
There you go.
Just
No, that's valid. That's extremely valid. I was immediately just intrigued just by the world that you're more or less presenting, but then like looking a little deeper, like you were saying, you kind of talked about how like myth and stuff is more like blended into this profit driven society. You've gone not just with myth, but like full on fairy tale with this kind of stuff, and that's the
oh
thing
yeah,
that
yeah.
like truly intrigued me. What was it about like fairy tales like that became more or less like the influence for telling the story?
I was like, I'm still into like just I found it very interesting how so many cultures have so many like similar fairy tales or similar like things from mythology. That's such an interesting thing to breed up. It's like I like there's so much you can breed of like also how these stories got told because a lot of them were like orally told stories and like how they may have evolved over the time, and that was I'm still into like kind of like the like I still do like a lot of research when it comes to like these different kind of like fairy tales and stuff like this. And the main antagonist in our first arc, so to speak, is Jack, and he's all the Jacks. So it's like Sprain Heel Jack, Jack the Ripper, Phantom Jack, Jack and the Beanstalk, and something I thought was going to be kind of a deep cut when I was originally like doing the storyboard of Jack Horner. 2 weeks late, 2 weeks right after I made the storyboard, Puss in Boots 2 comes out. I was so mad.
You were just like, I thought I cornered the market. How dare you?
Yeah. It doesn't, yeah, even it doesn't help that it's like we do have a reference to the thumb thing, and it's just like,
oh yeah, especially with like the little teaser you've been posting online with the thumb going into the pumpkin pie. Yep.
I think, yeah, the only one like I think might be a bit like more obscure is like Georgie Porgy, who also had kind of a similar thing. But the origin to that like fairy tale might be it's a bit more scandalous and stuff like that.
Just a tad. Well, you want to talk about scandalous? I think it was a bold move for you to have the main two protagonists of this, John Vetter and Rose Hunt, basically be based on Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf, and they're actually working together. What?
Yes. Well, the thing is, John's the big bad wolf, so it's like, who's the big bad wolf? Oh, is it the one from Red Riding Hood? Well, he's that. He's the wolf from Three Little Pigs, but he's also Fenrir. He's also Cerberus. He's also Romulus. He's also all these like wolves from different mythology. So it's like when he's the big bad wolf, he is like he's every wolf from every story.
Okay.
And Rose is a bit more complicated. She's technically like. She's also technically the daughter of like the actual like Red Riding Hood and the Woodsman. However, in this, they are based off like two characters, one from like Hindi folklore and one from like Colombian folklore. So it's like why her weapon like it's based off like a Spanish name, and she has like a lot of like she has like a lot of Indian influence and stuff like that as well. And she some weapons will appear in some magic later, but it's one of those things of like. I want these characters, kind of like what I mentioned with like Venture Bros, of like when you kind of like you can kind of dissect the references and like pull it apart and be like, oh wow, so that's what this was, that's what this meant, that's this guy of like you can kind of see like where a lot of this stuff kind of gets its origins from.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was also just like another influence show I watched was OVA called Gunsmith Cats, and in it yeah, Rayleigh Vincent. She was a bounty hunter, and her dad was like from India, and her mom's from like the UK, and it's one of the reasons why I decided to give like Rose kind of like a Indian influence. She's not like just like how John's like not actually like Nordic or German or like Italian. Rose isn't technically Indian, but she's like Indian coded, if that makes sense. She's Indian Colombian coded. If she was a human.
As long as you can definitely tell that there's at least an influence and a heritage in the Indian culture leading up to who she is today.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, actually, the boots we were basing her off of they were going to be more Colombian boots, but then one of the people I was working with on the animation shop was like, "This is too complicated. I cannot do all this." So it's like, okay, we'll simplify that. We'll do this.
That's extremely valid, but like it. Like hearing how you have all these different influences and all these different like fairy tales or whatnot, I'm just like, what inspired this? What made you want to sit down, seeing all these different things, and go, you know what? I want to make this. Like, I want this to be the reality. What was the inspiration for Howling Hoods?
A lot of the inspiration actually kind of comes from stuff like shows like. Of all the shows, like I think Cheers was probably the strongest influence.
I've noticed that, especially with like some of the teasers you've been putting out, and like some of the ones where you take clips from Cheers and you like put the characters as that. Yeah.
But yeah, I've always liked that kind of stuff. But it's like everything's a bit sad. Everything has like a bit like no one's really where they're meant to belong, and everyone's like in a weird group. I feel like, well, I can kind of do that with fairy tales because fairy tales they're so ingrained in like different cultures and stuff like that, but they're also so connected, like almost mechanically to like other cultures as well. I think it would just be an interesting like way to kind of like have this be done. And yeah, and there's other like characters and designs you will see later on, like our version of Zeus, or like he's every patriarchal god character of
Mm.
like and he took like his name is spelled like with a Y, and it's pronounced Waz, but like the spelling was more inspired by like the Hebrew spelling of Yahweh.
Oh, okay, that's fair. I mean, it's incredible seeing like how you've been able to take all these influences and blend it into a truly unique world at the end of the
Yeah.
day, and like especially some of the unique scenarios and the unique characters that you're providing more than anything else. Like the more I see of the Howling Hoods, the more I get intrigued by it because I'm
Yeah.
curious like how like the puzzle pieces fit or like how things are going to work. I imagine that's got to be a testament not just to your writing or whatnot, but to the team that you've been able to work with to help like really
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
craft this story to a certain point.
Well, interesting because it's like for now it's like mainly just written by me, but two fantastic well, three. Kevin I've mentioned, but he mostly does storyboards and designs with me. Kevin Tremor, he's on my Twitter and stuff. Whenever I do a design, it's done by him. I link him. But Christine Javier and JP Vargas are just like tremendous help who just carried me like throughout this whole thing. I'm like they're the two animators I hired, and they've worked on stuff like Disney shows like. The Big Hero 6 or the DuckTales.
Oh wow.
JP worked on Hitmonkey, and like they both worked on stuff like Prime's Hazbin Hotel and like other animation stuff. And it's just like they've been like doing like so much work and detail. And I do have also a big benefit of the fact of like I can they show me every shot they do. So it's like, hey, can we tweak this? Can we add this? Let's put this away. So like, and of course there are some limitations because it's also like, yeah, we just have like two people just doing animation, and like, we might be able to hire a compositor, but we're not sure. So it's like there is like definitely some limits of like also how much animation can we do? How
Right,
many
right.
characters can we? And yeah, I do. I am one to like I do also do some editing, so it's like okay, we don't need like that shot, so we'll just have like this character's head be showing. We'll have him sitting down. We'll have that to take like the burden off only so much. But it's like yeah, they're two incredible people. Yeah, JP he's also working on like it's a frog show. It's not it's like an action frog show. Keith David is in it. Oh, Libra, an army of frogs. Yeah, he worked on that,
Interesting.
and it's like they've been so much help. And like man, when this new episode comes out and you're gonna see the credits, it's just gonna be like it's gonna be animation, like some VFX and like in betweens and like line work and like coloring. It's like it's just gonna be like those two for the most part.
It's gonna be like the
And yeah,
same two people, maybe just like just to mix things up, you'll flip their names here and there, something like that.
yeah, yeah. It's like they're so like professional, so talented, but also, yeah, like they're so nice. It's like I think it's also a thing of like, of course, there are like some bumps in the road, but it's like, because it's just like one, there's a time difference between us, and it's like sometimes life just gets in the way. But it's like we have a pretty good relationship, and like Christine, she's so nice. It's like at times I do feel bad if like we're talking, but it's like I just keep her from working because we're just like sending, we're just like talking about like the day and stuff like that.
I mean that's valid. I mean, especially with again like how close you guys are as a group, also with like the incredible concept that you guys are working on, like really putting forth to do this kind of stuff. I'm curious for you, whether it be with this series or whether it be with Miss Manhattan or whatnot. Across the two, do you have a personal favorite moment or a personal favorite character that you can at least share at the moment? I know there's some that you're waiting for because you want to release it or whatnot, but like either like I said, a personal favorite character or personal favorite moment that you just absolutely love about both series so far.
God, I really like I do really love of just like just the characters interacting in Mismatch, and like I really like the villain we have planned with Elaine of
Ooh.
like what I'm gonna do for her, and she appears in the after credits. And I God, Kevin just knocked that introduction out of the park of
Ooh.
yeah, we work together. And yeah, we of course we still like later on we have to see how it goes of like are we gonna like get this to a studio? Are we gonna try and like do a Kickstarter to get fully animated? It's like uh a character kind of like there's a lot more like interpersonal culture in like Miss Manhattan, because I think that's also an interesting thing of like Miss Manhattan takes place on Earth, and we see how like that interacts now with our modern day.
Mhm.
Howling Hoods, it takes place like in the realm of Haven, and that's like entirely different. It's like it's more of like a noir setting, so that has like we have to do our own world building.
Okay.
Howling Hoods is also kind of an excuse for me to have like visual jokes and gags that just make me laugh, and like the like for one is that we have a reference to Norm and Cliff from Cheers and all that. And Norm's design is based off one of the characters, George Wendt, who plays Norm from Cheers, voiced in Garfield.
Right.
And Cliff is a carrier pigeon because in the show, Cliff was a mailman.
Right. I was thinking those visual jokes are like the simple visual joke that's the first thing you see. Obviously, the piggy bank, like that.
Yeah.
That's a good simple joke right there.
Yeah. And again, we do have like lore with the pigs, but a joke I'm very proud. It's one that it's just here for me. Of in this universe, the currency is like the universal currency is called beans.
Okay.
That's why the people who work at the bank, they're the little bean counters. So yeah,
Oh, it's so simple, but it's good. It's good. I like
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it does have like it's that, and it's like that stuff. It's like also references to just like different shows and movies I liked from the time. It's like, well, they're in the background. It's like you can see the influence, but like it can also work on its own. And there are a lot of like visual puns as well. One is sadly you're not going to see, but John Viter, his human form, he's only 5'7", maybe 5'6". So it's like, yeah, in his human form, the big bad wolf is like kind of short.
you, I'll say you literally went comic accurate Wolverine with that, didn't you?
Oh yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, said like in the new Deadpool movie, you see like comic accurate short Keen Logan, and it's like that is like that's our accurate John of like just a short buff hairy guy.
There you go. There you go. And surprisingly, throughout all this stuff that you're working on for yourself and whatnot, you found a way to be able to find some time aside to really promote the indie animation scene. And I know one of the biggest examples of that is with your indie interviews. Just out of curiosity, what exactly sparked you like going out there to some of these indie animators and like giving them a chance, interviewing them about their projects? What inspired that?
Some of it was just like some of it because they are people I knew beforehand and stuff like that. So it's like it kind of like shot back and forth. And I'm like, hey, I want like they're like one of them said like, hey, I want to promote a series, or the other said uh, or something like it got off like from there. Some people like kind of approached me like later on, which kind of worked out more, and it's usually mutuals. But also, one of my friends, Alex from Sentinel Corps, he did a comic, and he's still working on it, and like it's actually out to a degree now, and it's like we've actually known each other for years.
Oh, nice.
And so like he saw my stuff. He's like, "Hey, good work, man." I was like, "Yeah." It's like you ever want one, just hit me up. And he did hit me up, and so we decided to do an interview from that. And they're pretty fun. They're pretty laid back. It's like a pretty cool promotion thing. Recently, I got to talk with Charlie from Boxtown. Very cool guy.
That's one that like I saw that you had a chance to interview him. Like, wow, you were able to get him. That is incredible.
Very nice man. Like very cool project as well. I also got to talk to. You should check out their stuff. And like the movie's gonna come out soon. Lamar from Captain Zero.
Okay.
I donated to their stuff originally.
Good.
And they hit me up. It's like, hey, there was actually an issue with like the financing. It's like, oh, no problem. And I sent it again, and then my buddy, I brought it up to my friend Josh, and like he talked about it, and it's like we decided to like we did a podcast together talking about Spider-Man stuff in general. And then I did a very, very quick like indie interview with him. But it's like that's another fun thing of like I do like talking to like other animation people about like media and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's like I also like talk about like other movies, or Man of 1,000 Thoughts. He came on once and we talked about Helva Boss, but it's also like you can get me talking to about like Spider-Man stuff for like a good hour, and it's like I did feel a bit bad because their series deserves way more coverage.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
And it will come out soon, but Captain Zero is so cool, but it's like I felt bad because like the last 15 minutes was like, oh, by the way, mini interview. Sorry about that.
I mean, to be fair, it's Spider-Man. I mean,
yeah. I mean, yeah, we were talking about like Spider-Verse stuff, and it's like, yeah, Spider-Verse is so just that's like you can talk about that stuff for like 2 hours in terms of like
You could have your own separate podcast just talk about all the different possibilities when it comes to Spider Verse,
oh
like
yeah,
just
yeah.
straight up. I mean, for God's sake, one of the interviews I would dream to have on this podcast, I would love to talk to the kid that was able to get
Do the
yeah,
Legos.
do the Lego ones, like able to get like the Lego version into that Spider Verse film, just to like
Mhm.
get his like side of like how everything was, because like obviously he did like the trailer and stuff like in Lego
Oh yeah,
form or whatnot, and that somehow led to him getting an opportunity to work on arguably one of the biggest animated
biggest movie.
films. Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the biggest
yeah.
films.
It's
Yeah, straight up.
yeah, cool getting to see all these new of like also Austin from Dodo Dots and like his project of like Dodo Docs and like just how like you see how far like online animation has come since
Oh
like the
yeah.
2000. I'm not like dissing early 2000s like animation, but it's like as someone who got to like when I was like very young, I did watch like God stuff of like the early Red versus Blues or like the early Death Battles. It's like no disrespect, but it's like because they were working with like stuff at the time, but it's like it was kind of like dolls back then. But like
Yeah.
it got like it's just keeps on getting better and better. It's like also Death Battles animation lately has been like I've checked it out like again after like a while. It's like it's been like crazy like TV quality good.
Like it's amazing.
of
It's amazing how like the online animation scene has really improved, partially because of getting access to these incredible resources to make such quality stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, also get like, yeah, God, it's you also get like it's something I've talked about a lot because when it comes to like digital or like old traditional stuff, it's like I love traditional stuff, but it's like I do feel like people kind of like over nostalgize like traditional stuff where it's like to the point of like you have all these cool tools and cool options and it's like you're doing older stuff for the sake of like an arbitrary romantic reason as opposed to like what the creators were actually doing like Disney Plus is like they had a documentary of like Star Wars and like you see all like the very workman craftsmanship like at the time in the original like George Lucas he was not happy about the original Cantina scene. He's like cover it in shadow. I don't like how this looks or stuff like Jurassic Park, like originally, or like even Jaws, the
Yeah.
very infamous example of like, yeah, the shark was going to be in way more of it, and the shark doesn't look like watching it now, like as an adult, it's like it doesn't look that amazing when it's there, but it's like all the suspense of like it just not being there is just like wow, and it helped the movie. It's like you're working with the tools you had at the time, but it's like people want to like almost like chemically replicate that was like you that was made because of like they had struggles as an artist and they like were creative and they worked around it and stuff like that
And those same limitations is honestly what leads to some of the cool indie animation they see nowadays. Like the fact that
oh
while
yeah.
there is so much that a indie animation person can do with the tools at their task and whatnot, sometimes with what they're limited to do, really make sure that they punctuate. I don't even know what the word is. It really puts a period, exclamation point, all the different punctuations onto whatever they're trying to emphasize. Like the Jaws example that you gave, like yeah, the shark was gonna be in more of it and whatnot. I think it was honestly good because like that kind of suspense like throughout, like the literal usage of less is more made that film the iconic classic it is today.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course, and like that was actually kind of a thing with like so because I spent a lot of time like writing more like script stuff, so it's like I am more of like a dialogue heavy focused person. It's like I do love and Howling Host of Mr. Manhattan does have action, but it's like I want to build toward it. I don't just want like an action scene every moment.
Right.
I think you can do it, and like I do love like visual storytelling as well, but it's like. Uh, there are like some movies or some stuff where it's like remember for like the great action where it's like here's only like really two action scenes or even like horror where it's like there's only like two big like scares but it's like it's the characterization it's the build up it's all that stuff if I do get a budget of course like you're gonna see like the wild stuff we got planned for like hods of like the magic and fight scenes we do have planned because another influence was like stuff of like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like more of the vibe and like the camp and like the stuff of that.
Yes.
And And yeah, it's like Rose especially does have it, but it's like I want everyone to feel unique, everyone to feel their own thing. Uh, so without it, just yeah, and it's a pain when you're making like something like this, and it's like it's only so long for now. But how like the new one does have like a lot of clips that I do want to share, but I can't share because like those are really spoiler heavy. I can't share that.
That's valid. That's valid. You don't have to give away everything. I understand that, but
Yeah, luckily I do have a few friends that are just like check this out, check this out.
there you go. There you go. It's a good thing to emphasize. And another way that I wanted to talk about how you've been able to emphasize the indie scene, actually, in kind of way you kind of let them kind of showcase themselves. One of the things I absolutely love that you've done recently is this whole entire the indie scene like little gala that you do, to where you like
Oh yeah.
like you've basically like let people, let indie creators like basically draw their creations or themselves like going down like the red carpet or whatnot. What inspired that? Just out of curiosity.
I was just thinking about it and was like thinking about galas, but I remember I'm not sure if it's just specifically the X-Men, but Marvel had a gala where they had all their comic characters like in like fancy outfits and all that stuff.
Okay.
And I actually another thing is like I do have a friend that we talk like a lot about fashion. It's like, oh, I want John this, I want Rose in this. Oh, look at these cabaret outfits from the 1930s and all this stuff. And look at this outfit. And it's just like, well, what if I do a gala? And yeah, there was a bit of a issue on my part at the very end because like some family stuff came out. I wasn't able to do like a like the announcement at the time or the stuff I wanted to, but I was still able to get it out. I do plan on doing it again next year. Of course, like everyone can participate who wants to participate, and it's like also I do have more followers than last year, so like and more people who are like in the indie scene have seen it, so it's like okay, that's good.
Well, I mean, also, and correct me if I'm wrong, aren't you currently trying to set one up to help out the people with Palestine in Gaza or whatnot?
Yes, we are. We are doing another Gaza a Gaza like Gaza relief fundraiser, and I can only say so much of like what she's got planned, but the Lonely Lazarus, the person who did that, the Electric Mind animation that you've probably seen. She saw it and like just she retweeted it, and like we actually got to converse of like it's really cool like what's going on. It's like I think it was really cool that she retweeted. And she's like, oh yeah, it's really cool. She's like I she said, don't super quote me, but she's like, hopefully I will be able to, make an anime thing, but it's like, or like do a drawing to that. But she's like so busy, and it's like, I get it, dude. But a person who did a huge shout out to him, like a person who helped me kind of like formulate this because I asked him like a lot of questions of like, hey, how's this look? What do you think of this? And he was like, yeah. And he's like that he said like that does sound like a good idea. You should do it. Is Damien from Ghost Friends?
Okay.
One of the good like yeah, definitely one of the reasons why I decided to do the Gaza of like because he was like very encouraging. He's like, yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. And he helped share it and stuff like that. He did help it like get a lot of like traction. And even if you don't have an indie animated show, or if you have a show and you don't have time to participate, there's still, or like time to draw, there's still time to like, participate. Even if you don't have it, you can just, if you donate like, $5, your name will be in the credits and all that stuff. And we'll have a whole like row, and we got some great people being showed right now. And, I got something planned, but yeah, I may extend the deadline because it does seem like people are just kind of noticing that a bit now. And, I might spend it to like maybe 10 days in October. I don't want to see. I'll see how it goes, of course.
I mean, the deadline for it at this point when we're recording or whatnot is September 30th. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
So when this episode does come out, there's still a few days left. So if it's not extended ahead of time, so if you guys want to both. For indie animation people out there or not, if you still want to help a great cause, helping out the fantastic,
of course,
helping out the people in Gaza, but also like showcasing a fun little how should I word this? Like a fun little interaction involving the incredible people within the indie animation scene. I highly recommend you donate if you can.
Yes, yeah, it's all great and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, it's also it's just another thing to see of like and support, and it's like it's very cool seeing like the people who the people who have been like very like vocally supportive of it and all that stuff, and it has also just been an interesting experience as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And
Of
yeah, we do have
course.
some stuff getting planned, and we already have some participants. So yeah, just wait.
I mean, it makes me excited for that. It makes me excited for what you have planned with like the interviews with the animation stuff they have planned. Like, I can only imagine how excited you have to be for the future of
Yeah.
your content, both short term and long term.
Oh yeah. I'm very excited, but also very tired.
That is a mood. That is a mood and a
Yeah.
half. uh,
There have been some like people who have like reached out to like, okay, like maybe I could do this, but it's like I have to find like a good day.
yep.
Or it has also just been like, okay, what do I need to prioritize first and stuff like that. It's like yeah, I might just even just create I might have to make like a separate like just email for people to like submit towards it. So
Okay.
it's just like if you're interested, just do it here. Leave me alone.
I mean, there's also that, but I was also gonna say, like for example, the animations alone with like Howling Hoods and Myth in
Oh
Manhattan.
yeah.
I can also imagine how excited you are to like reveal more of that to the world and
Oh
see what
god,
people are gonna
yeah.
see with that.
Yeah, man, it's been a test to my patience because I am the guy who is like the minor like breakthrough we have is like I want to share it with everyone, but it's like I can't.
Oh no, I get that mentality so much. Like, especially whenever like if there's something that I have to like kind of keep private, like I might share it with like one person that's usually
Oh
my
yeah,
girlfriend. But like
yeah.
I want so badly to like send it out to the world. Like for example, like with this podcast or whatnot,
Of course.
I have several incredible things I want planned to do with this thing, but I gotta hold back because we're still working on that stuff.
Yeah. I do have some friends who are like, here's this professional thing I'm working on, but you can't show anyone this because the show isn't out yet. I'm not gonna say
Right?
what show it was because I don't want them to get in trouble.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's insane, like the connections you've been able to make with this kind of thing as well, like with all these different aspects of this creative path. Like honestly, thinking back with all the animations, with the interviews, with the indie animation stuff. Hell, thinking back to like when you were first interested in the arts, with the comic books you were exposed to, and how that's kind of influenced you at this point. Like, are you more or less surprised with the art journey you've been able to be on up to this point?
Definitely a bit, because I always thought of myself more as like a book person. It's like I never thought because animation it just seemed like the thing that I would never be able to grasp. But then I saw like other people doing it. It's like being like, here's my animation journey. It's like, oh man, that's so cool. I wish I could do it. But it's like it's kind of that thing of like, just do it, just try,
Yep.
you idiot, just get out there and like follow your stupid dreams and just it's like you got that is the tough part as well of like is such a scary monumental thing, but it's like I am like very glad I went down this path, and like a part of me does regret I didn't go down it sooner, but I am glad I kind of like tackled it with more maturity and wisdom now. It's like it's a great learning experience as well. I do hope to continue to grow and make more stuff, and yeah, we have like tons of cool stuff planned as well. And I hope more people get to see that, but I also hope I get to like I've even been like revisiting like even like my old web series of like, hey, maybe I might like bring this back in like an AMAC form of like just to share it with some people. It's like
Right.
some people really like it already. Some people it's just like it's one of those things of like when you revisit a dead project that's like it was never like really dead. You just kind of like left it there in stasis, which is kind of sad, but it's also like a kind of a positive thing of like you can just come back and like revisit it in some way. You just gotta be realistic about it.
It's stuff like that. Like hearing that or whatnot, it leads me back to my kind of creative ventures as well or whatnot, because I went to college for filmmaking, TV mass media was specifically what the major was called or whatnot, TV, film, all that jazz or whatnot. And there was a short film that I did in college that I want to retoy with, and I want to like make it to its own indie animation series called Shifted.
Nice.
It's about a person who, after doing like the most random thing in the anime in the short that I made in college, the live action short or whatnot, I made it to where like they just picked up a cactus that was just sitting in the middle of the road, like a potted cactus or whatnot. Turns out that cactus was a shapeshifter and gifted the person the ability to shapeshift. But the way that they shapeshift is not like traditionally like make me a puppy and I'm a puppy.
Yeah.
No, it's one of those like they have to think of like descriptors, and even if they're trying or not, sometimes those descriptors can change them into objects without even really thinking about it. So
Yeah.
so it'd be just like a journey of like accepting this kind of new form of themselves and also learning how to deal with these random abilities while also just trying to live their normal life.
Oh yeah, definitely a comedic thing. It's also interesting. Like I did also just go down the role of like some directors I really like that like started in animation or did like animation stuff. Like David Lynch was really into animation as well.
Yes.
And like Spielberg, he has like a lot of respect for animation because like he's like that's how you do storyboards in live action. It's like because you have to be so technical when you're making it. Because I remember also James Gunn, he was talking about like Spider-Verse ability because like what I really respect about this medium is that like so much of it has like 90% of it has to be planned and like ready from the get-go. And of course there are some like minor changes and stuff like that, but it's like you really have to have an idea in mind and like a storyboard. It really has to be like down to the line. Yeah, there's only really so much you can change and add.
That is true. That is true. But for this next question, if I may, what if I gave you at least more possibility to change and add for a certain thing and give you more or less the dream scenario, if I may? Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags. I come up to you and I'm like, look, Michael, we've seen the incredible stuff you've been able to push out there. We can tell there's potential here for something incredible. You just need a little extra, push, a little extra platform to get you to that point. We have access to everyone and anyone in whatever industry possible, and more money than should be possible. You really should be compensating those animators that are striking right now. They really need that paycheck more than anything else. Paycheck, health insurance, the ability to live.
Yeah.
We'll focus on them in a little bit. We promise. We promise. We promise. But right now, we are focusing on you and you alone. If given this opportunity, what would be the dream Michael Greayworks project?
Man, I would love to revisit uh Mr. Manhattan, but in by God, Flying Bark Studio, because
Okay.
that's so cool. The animation there is so cool. But for that, I do think another thing is just like it does depend on like the time frame of when this happens, but it's like because there is a very minor like Tangled remake project I'm working on. It's basically
Ooh.
I want to make Tangled like animated, but I want to make it before Disney makes their live action remake. And
Mm-hmm.
working, I'm like I am going through some voice actors and stuff like that. It's like
Okay.
well if we're able to do it, well if we're able to do it, it's like because that's another thing. If like there's been so many like live action remakes, it's just like wouldn't it be funny if we just did it before them?
Yeah. Hearing that, like, I know it's not gonna be of the same magnitude or whatever, but it just kind of reminds me of back, like you were talking about in like middle school, doing like your own personal takes on like the stuff, or like the Mystery Science Theater on the fan made
Yeah.
Star Wars film. Like it's essentially something within that same vein, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. It's just also like yeah, we also you could also kind of tell like kind of the stuff I was like, yeah, I want to do my own Tangled version, but I want to make it like Pirates of the Caribbean, arcade, and Mad Max.
Ooh. Okay,
Yeah,
you have my curiosity now.
yeah,
Oh, that
yeah. It was
sounds
one of those things
incredible.
of like, yeah, Tangled remake, like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like that's not, it's not that.
That just makes me so curious to see how that goes down. I hope you get a chance to really go through it and make that a reality.
Yeah,
Um,
the voice of Rose is going to be our Rapunzel. Fun
there you
enough.
go. That's incredible. I love to hear that. But sadly, we need to get down from the dream scenario. We gotta get back to reality, and I'll ask the ever so generic question: where do you hope to see yourself in, say, 5 to 10 years from now?
I hope I get to make like have a more larger but still like very a managed team, so it's just not on all those people. And I do hope I get to make like an actual like show to a degree, whether it's like by a studio or if it's like online. And I do want to work with like some professional people, and I do want more like some voices I really admire. Like I would like there's like one like demon like monster character in this who has like man if Ron Perlman just voices him like as the Lich, it's like
Right.
that's perfect. uh and stuff like that. It's just like man, it's one of those things of like it's such a I have been talking to like a few professional people, and it's like I'm not gonna say like which specific company, but it's like I have been talking to some people. It's like well, maybe something might happen, maybe it won't, but it's like I do hope like I'll get the money and support to like further support like the very hardworking animators and artists and like voice actors working on my thing. They are getting paid. Heads up, just everyone online watching. It's like you don't pay them. It's like I do pay them. Uh, but it's like I do feel bad. Like it's like if anything, I would like to pay them more, and I would like more animators on here, so it's
Right.
just not them doing all this work. Yeah, and they are like getting paid technically mostly full for. The only reason why some of them aren't being like they do like a little cut is because we are personal friends.
Right, right. I mean, it's one of those like, you could give a friendly discount in that sort of situation, but also like, there's a good mutual understanding. So if I
No,
could,
no,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's still a job. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and all that stuff.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Same if like I were to paint their house or something like that. I would expect some compensation to a
yeah,
degree. Maybe not completely the same rate as like if someone painted like a normal house, but like
yeah. It's
like it's a job.
it's not like the compensation is a high five and a handshake. No, it's legit
Yeah.
compensation at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah, of course. Of course.
But that would be an incredible thing just to see, just get a chance to do what you truly want to do and compensate everyone for it.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
a wonderful thing to do. Um, as we start to wind down the interview, I just have one last question I want to ask you, Michael. Obviously, you're deeply entrenched in art at this point. Like, you've really devoted yourself to this field in one form or fashion. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
I think it's incredibly important. It's incredibly expressive, but also a way to just like communicate with other people and like be expressed with one another and like see the cultural like intersections. So like even like and of course I'm sure you've seen like those people who's like, oh, I got really into like Japanese culture and like language because of like the show I watched, or I really got into Spanish culture and all this stuff. It's such a interesting thing. It's so importantly like ingrained in like our society, and it's like when you get like the idea or just like expression that's like I really like this but I'm afraid of making it. It's like you like write it down or tell someone or put it out there in some way or form, even if it's not like the way you made it, just becomes like it's such a beautiful abstract thing, and it just become like this artistic expression of yourself. But also if you make it with so many people, it's just like you see the collaboration along the way, and it's just like I think it's just such a beautiful experience. And like it's also one of the reasons why I love like interviewing all these like indie anime people, because like they show me all like their different stuff, and it's like if it's like I love talking to people who's like, oh, this is a genre I really like, even if you don't really like it, and like I might be able to appreciate about like an aspect of it more than I did beforehand, or like maybe they even like we're talking about the same piece of art and they have a different take on a character, and it's like, okay, well, why's your take on the character like this as opposed to mine? And they're like, well, this. And it's like my perspective might change, or like their perspective might change. It's just such a you learn something about everyone when you are drenched in art like this.
That's a great aspect. It's a great view, and it is wonderfully worded, if I do say so myself. Um,
Thank you.
Michael, that is all the questions I have for you. I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I will shower you with a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do what I want. Um, uh, like I said, Michael, I've certainly been noticing you out here in this indie space for quite a while, both with the support you give to the podcast, and trust me, I genuinely appreciate that from the bottom of my heart.
Mhm.
But also, like, the stuff you've been able to push out there, whether it's these incredible conversations with other indie animation people or your own incredible ideas, really putting out there and really just like putting these beautiful concepts for the world to truly like love and appreciate as much, if not more, than you do. Um, Getting the chance to really sit down with you, hear more or less your story, see where you come from, see where all this stuff, see where exactly like how your mind is like, the gears are changing in there, to see how you're creating such incredible concepts. Like, it makes me appreciate truly what you're doing, and I can't wait to see where you're gonna be going with this kind of stuff. Because again, I've said a million times before, if this was a drinking game, people would probably be getting alcohol poisoning at this point. But
Yeah.
I love these concepts. I love these ideas. I love what you're putting out there, because it's very rare to see something like this out there, and to see you going forth, taking on that task, really presenting these stories that do mean a lot to you. Like, it makes me excited, and I'm going to be rooting for you every single step of the way whenever you get these things closer and closer to presenting them out there into the world, because people need to see this stuff and show that love and support just as much as you've been showing that love and support back to that community. Long and the short of it, Michael, thank you for what you do. Thank you for showcasing that love throughout the entire world, and please keep up the incredible work, because I know people, if they are not already, they're going to see this stuff. They're going to absolutely love it, and hopefully they will be able to give that love right back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it means a lot. Yeah, maybe by the time this podcast goes up, maybe the next episode of Howling Hoods will be done by then. No promises. Again, some stuff might come up. It's life,
Yeah.
but like hope because we are like in the final stretch, folks.
Oh, you were teasing. I will certainly let the people know
Yeah.
when this episode does drop, if it's out there or if it's just a short time away. So
Mhm.
sorry for context. This episode is premiering September 26th, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So if it's out there, it is. If not, well, it's right around the corner. People, you definitely need to be keeping an eye
Mhm.
out. And if people want to see when that episode drops, or just get to know more about all the stuff I've been gushing about for the past hour and a half or so, go ahead and plug your stuff for the people at home.
Oh yeah, I am Michael from Greayworks. You can find me on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram of all the names. You can also like just look up Howling Hoods, Miss Manhattan, or Indie Interviews on any place, and you will find me. Uh, I do, of course, I do mini animations. I do a lot of stuff like Howling Hoods. I do stuff like Miss Manhattan. You can find updates of like character designs and just like fun animations. But also, I occasionally talk about media with like some friends and stuff like that. That's all over the place. Yeah, and yeah, not that too much else has been going on. So it's just like, yeah, just look up Greatworks anywhere you can, and that'll be a big help if you want like some early previews. We do have a Patreon, and that does have like it has like very basic support, but it does also have like like every little bit helps, but you do also get to see stuff early, and as well as like behind the scenes of like exclusive like music to like different stuff if you want to download it. But yeah, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, it's been really fun talking about this.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to really talk about you. And if you missed any links, I'll be sure to have them in the description below because, like I said, people definitely need to be paying
Oh
attention to
yeah.
what you're pushing out there. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
Nothing much. Thank you so much for having me on. The next Howling the Hoods should be done soon. We are also going to be working on a trailer for our Tangled remake. If you want to see that before Disney makes theirs, and stuff like that. But yeah, I hope everyone gets to just take it easy and get a support like watch other like find an indie anime show you really like or like give something like new a try. But
Yep.
yeah, I'm excited for the future of animation online.
You and me both. And with that, all I've left to say is for the people at home, if you can, pay your artists.
Yeah, especially studios.
Es- Especially studios. Pay your artists.
Tell me what's wrong, tell me sparks in motion. Sing me a song, tell me your eyes can all open. Show me it all, put me up in the car you drove when you used to call. Show me it all.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If this is your first time listening, I cannot tell you how much I truly appreciate it. Michael was truly a character, wasn't he? No, in all seriousness, Michael, if you've gotten up to this point, thank you so much, not just for the love and support you've given to this podcast, but just that love and support that you really toss out to the indie community. Um, I know we definitely need a lot more people like that. We need more people out there really showcasing that love for the dedication that people are willing to put themselves in to really push out an incredible product that they want to see happen. One of the big things, especially nowadays with the animation strike currently going on, hashtag stand with animation, um, I've seen a lot of people really talk about, like, especially with big name producers or big name directors, like people that everyone knows in the community, talk about, why don't you just go indie? Why don't you just go indie? It's not that simple, folks. As much as we like to, as much as we want it to be the case, it's not that simple as just, hey, this person, you have cool concept, go indie. The main reason why there's studios in the first place is to provide both funding and a platform for a lot of these incredible ideas. There's just a good handful of people that have gone independent and have really gotten lucky and been able to be sustainable with that stuff. I mean, Hasbin Hotel, Hell of a Boss, Lackadaisy, The Amazing Digital Circus, Murder Drones. Like, just look at all those different examples alone. That's not every single indie animated project out there, people. I have highlighted so many incredible projects that I think deserve that one in a million chance, but it just doesn't happen for everyone as much as we want it to. What people put out there on the indie scene is more or less a labor of love and a labor of passion for a concept that they want to see to the fullest. Now, obviously, if there was the Mr. Moneybag scenario, like I said beforehand, you know, everyone would be able to tell their story to the fullest, but that's just not how it works. And that's why it's important now more than ever to try to really get the contract right. Make sure that the animators that are out there, they're able to not only tell the stories that they want to, but earn a living so that they can continue to do so. There are so many animators and so many different like parts of the animation process that it's hard for them to have any sort of sustainability in this business, especially when the studios seemingly have it set up to where no one in the animation can succeed, which is ridiculous because, well, animation it certainly sells more than anything else. I mean, Jesus Christ. I think I saw a graphic the other day that in 2024 alone, there's like 8% of all films that are animated, and they have earned like close to 25% of the global box office. You can't tell me that that's just a fluke. Animation can be sustainable. Animation can be a successful field, but the studios need to make sure that that's possible. They need to allow their employees to live a living wage and be able to live out in these locations or work from home more than anything else. They need to be able to give them health care and all this other, you know, aspects and such. Not every single project is able to go indie and strike it gold and be the next, you know, Amazing Digital Circus with 350 million views on their pilot episode alone. That's just not how it works. So if you can, look up, you know, Twitter accounts such as Animation Workers United and such to see how you can support these people and really help influence these studios to understand that they need to show that same love and support for animation that the people working in it have, and then some. At the end of the day, we need to show that these people matter. We need to show that animation matters. We need to show that the arts matter. So at the end of the day, stand with animation.